Hey, it's Joe. Welcome back. Just want to let you know where you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Joe Ryan. On the web, joeryan.com. If you're struggling and you're trying to work through your false self, your family system role, trying to get unstuck, I do offer coaching. That's at joeryan.com/coaching. If you want to find all my social, YouTube, Twitter, all that other fun stuff, you can go to joeryan.com/links. I got slammed pretty hard last week for a post I put on Instagram. I had no idea it was going to cause such a reaction in people. The post was, the fear you feel in your body is not happening now. It's fear from your past that has been trapped inside of you. Go back and re-experience the fear to release it. Now, apparently, this ruffled a lot of feathers, and I was just shocked at the hate and the anger coming at me for it. That is my process. This is what I believe it to be. For me, this was the way out. We have things happen where we don't feel validated, we don't feel loved, we feel humiliated, abandoned, disrespected, abused, whatever. It causes negative emotions. If you came from a place where you weren't allowed to stand up or speak up, you had to take those feelings that you were getting and you had to put them somewhere. Because if you expressed them, I'm sure the abuse and all the fun things I just mentioned became worse. So you had to put those feelings away. You weren't allowed to have the reactions. I wasn't allowed to be sad. I wasn't allowed to be lonely. I wasn't allowed to be angry. I wasn't have a puss on my face. I wasn't allowed to be negative. It was very few things I was allowed to be. So for me, taking all of that hurt and betrayal and pushing it down and never feeling it, it just festers in there. And there's a dis-ease in my body because I walk around this earth trying to keep 10 steps ahead of it. Because when my brain and my nervous system start getting into a dialogue, I have no control over the reaction. I spiral down into this worthless place where it truly goes back to those childhood moments where you weren't allowed to express what you were feeling when you were experiencing it and or why. So you were never allowed to do it. So anytime anything comes up for me that I feel needy, I go right to shame. I go right to worthless. I go right to helpless. I go right to not good enough. See, I wasn't allowed to have needs. It wasn't acceptable where I came from. So I learned to cut that off and not feel it anymore. Soon as I feel an inkling of needy, my body reacts in a way that I can't even begin to explain. I spiral down to that little child in the corner of that room, fearing for my life. I mean, it may sound dramatic, but I'm a kid. They look like giants. Life and death at that moment. So for me to heal this part of me, avoiding neediness is not the answer. Avoiding the pain that came with it, avoiding the hurt that came with all of that has not worked. It has led me to ODing. It has led me to be put in these situations that were extremely dangerous because I had no regard for my body or my soul. I just kept away from being needy. And I would numb out. I would stay 10 steps ahead of it. I needed constant action around me so that my head was on a swivel, paying attention to everything. Just not to feel things that I wasn't allowed to feel. People ask me, what's my process? How do I do it? I'll tell you how I do it. I feel uncomfortable My first reaction is to pick up a cigarette, pick up a drink, smoke some weed, swallow some pills. Action. Get out of that feeling. Numb out. Put something in my body. The first step for me is acknowledging the fact that I want to numb out and not doing it. Then I get quiet. I shut my phone off. I put it in the other room. I lay down in the darkness and I close my eyes. If you're doing it right now, if you close your eyes, you will start to feel. You try to become absent of thought. See, when we have bad feelings, we go up to thought because that's a pacifier. That's a way of satisfying the feelings. It's this dialogue that you get into. Your emotions and your thoughts just have this dialogue between them. You got to get out of that conversation. You become a mediator between the two. To do the work and get into the feelings is to lay down in the dark, get quiet, and let your thoughts and your emotions duke it out while you sit there as an innocent bystander. Close your eyes and feel in your body right now where you feel that disturbance. For me, it's usually in my upper chest. It used to be in my belly when I was younger. I feel it on the right side of my chest up high. And I just allow myself to feel it. I don't allow myself to fear it. I let it come up. I let it take me over. My heart starts to race. I start to sweat. My body is in sheer panic. And it's starting to come out. By not avoiding those feelings and sitting in them, what I am doing is I'm teaching my brain and my body and my soul that I can handle whatever discomfort is in my body. And I sit with that uncomfortable for as long as I can. And if I go to thought and I catch myself trying to think my way out of it, I stop and I pull back. I let the emotions and the thoughts run amok without me getting involved to mediate. And that is painful. And that is difficult. It hurts to the point where I feel like my body is going to explode. That I can't handle it anymore. I can't take it. I just want the pain to stop. And then I sit there a little bit longer with it. And I keep pushing myself for as long as I possibly can to sit with it. Sometimes that pain will spark memories. Now, it's not an endless thought debate. They will actually spark memories of fear and scary situations from childhood where I can actually see cause and effect. That pain and that discomfort and that panic and that fear that I am sitting with, that I am allowing my body to feel, that I am allowing myself to open up, to be vulnerable enough to feel it. The memories start to come. I start to map back what had happened, what the fear was, how terrified I was, and what I had to do not to feel it. I go back and I start feeling it. See, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know exactly where all of these fears are. By being quiet and sitting with them, the memories come slowly. And then when I get a memory, I will purposely lay down at another point quietly, and I will put myself back to that scene, to that day, to that hour, to that minute, to that event. And I go back to that scared, helpless little child. And I sit with him for as long as I possibly can. And what I'm doing is I'm learning how to reframe it. You see, I'm a grown man and I live in a lot of fear. And that is humiliating on many levels. I go back and I meet the fear at its point of origin, and I become that emotional child. You see, I've cut that kid off, and I've been looking at this through the eyes of an adult. You're weak. You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You're helpless. You're a victim. All of that negativity as an adult, realizing that you can't function the way you want. But by going back and becoming that emotional child that you are, that is within you, that has been cut off, reconnecting to that. That, to me, is where the healing happens. I sit with that emotional, frightened child, and I hold its hand emotionally, and I join it. You see, I cut him off because I hate him. I hate that little fucker. Because he runs amok. It keeps my nervous system off track. It keeps me from having peace and clarity and a better life. So I'm angry at that little bastard for not standing up for himself, for not doing more, for not getting out of it, for not standing up for himself. And when I go back and I feel those things as an emotional child, I realize that there was not one fucking thing that kid could have done differently at that moment. His life and his survival depended on taking his fear and his hurt and absolutely fucking burying it and betraying himself. He didn't have a choice. So I meet him at his pain. And I keep going back, and I keep meeting him there. And each time I go back, it gets less painful. It gets less triggering. It gets less fearful. And I go back enough times where I can go back to the memory and not feel pain and hurt and humiliation and embarrassment and all those good things. I release the pain by meeting it as pain. I learn how to forgive myself. I learn how to tell myself that it wasn't your fault. You did not have a choice. You did everything possible you could to stay as safe as possible, and that safety meant giving up of yourself, abandoning yourself, cutting off parts of you. And once we cut them off and distance gets between them, we're not emotionally intelligent at that age. We can't process it. We can't understand it. Nobody teaches this to us. There's nothing modeled. This world does not have any value on mental health. It's all money, greed, power, status. We're missing it. So I go back and I have to love this kid. I have to let him know that I'm there, and we are going to walk through this together. I am terrified and fearful in the present, and it has nothing to do with what's going on in the moment right now. It is a memory recall. It is an imprint in your brain, in your body, in your cells, in your soul. And you have put decades between that event and the fear that you live in now. We have to go back and build a bridge back to that place that we've cut off. And we have to reconnect. If there was an easier way, I am the easier way guy. Trust me, I would have found it. I have been working on myself for as long as I can remember. I have read all I could possibly read, listened to all I possibly could. I've journaled more pounds of notebooks than I could even begin to count. Nothing has healed me more than going back into my hurt and into my pain and reliving it. And I know a lot of people are going to take this the wrong way, and it's not going to work for them, and that is fine. There is no one way to do this. For me, this is the only way. Find your way. Get back to you. Get back to that little kid inside of you that you've abandoned and cut off because you had no choice. Avoiding it doesn't work for me, and it doesn't work for a lot of people. It's annoying that we have to do this work, that we have to work so hard to regulate our nervous system, to feel safe within our own bodies. It is easy to blame. It's easy for me to pick up, and shoot up, and swallow, and smoke, and all of that fun stuff. But it never led anywhere. Covering up and numbing out just prolongs and deepens the process. Peeling away the layers of addiction, starting to understand your patterns, starting to understand your triggers. See, we don't know what we're afraid of. We have no idea what caused some of this fear and this pain. How can you know how to fix something if you don't know where it's broken? Finding out where it broke and going back and repairing it. It's never going to be an easy journey. Avoiding it will take you further away from it. And I know this stuff is painful. If you can find somebody who has done the work that you need to do, that can go with you to the places, those deep, dark, hurtful, scary places that you need to go to without taking you out of your feelings, that can be a positive mirror. See, a lot of this is our own perception. When I get triggered, there is no other perception. It's mine and nobody else's. I've been wronged. Fuck you. That's it. End of story. And I've had the same pattern forever. But when you have somebody that can mirror you and say, bro, you are just going about this the wrong way. You're not looking at it from these 8 other ways. And it's like, well, I can't look at it from those ways because my default response is to protect myself. And this is the only way that I know how to do it because this is what had worked when I was younger. And I never learned any other skills. Find a good therapist. Find a good coach. Find good friends that you can trust. Find yourself. Start trusting yourself with your fears. Start trusting yourself with your emotions. Start getting comfortable with them. Start integrating them back into your life. Start loving yourself again. Because all those parts that are cut off, those are the parts of us that we find unlovable, unacceptable, and that's where our self-hate lives. Get into the things that you feel are unacceptable in you. And start to get to know that part of you. This is all vulnerability. I know I've been talking a lot about vulnerability lately, but that's kind of where I'm at. I've never been good at it. I put myself out there, I open myself up, and I am terrified when I do. I love doing it. I love being free and not an endless thought about what I have to say, how I have to say, just to speak and feel my emotions come out of me without watching myself. And then 10 minutes later, I go and I suck back in and I'm like, oh, you overshared. That was way too much. You're too vulnerable. You're too exposed. You're too transparent. These people can see you. You're a miserable, worthless piece of shit. Go back into hiding. When you can start to own the parts of you that you've cut off, vulnerability gets easier because that's what you're doing. You're becoming vulnerable with yourself by going back into the places you fear. That's vulnerable. That's self-love. That's self-care. That's you taking care of you. And for me, there is nothing more frightening for a person who has very little self-worth for most of his life, very little self-value, to actually have to go back into the places I hate about me so that I can learn to love them. Man, it's something I never wanted to have to do. But once you start doing it and you figure out your process and works for you, there's no stopping, because every layer you uncover, every fear that you get in touch with, that you make peace with, that you understand, is just one more piece of you that is now free to live how you choose, not live based on how your fears dictate your life. Thanks for listening. You can contact me at joeryan.com. Follow me on Instagram at joeryan. And if you want, you can leave us a review on iTunes. That'd be great. All right, take care.